Right behind me here is Cley Hill, and it's one of the biggest UFO hotspots in the UK. And I'm here to tell the story of what's been taking place here and the town behind it called Warminster, because some of the most famous cases have taken place in this vicinity, and most notably in the 1960s, which really solidified this place on the map. So let's investigate and let me tell the story. Warminster in the 1960s was just your ordinary quiet market town. Nothing about Warminster suggested it would become part of a global mystery. And before anyone saw anything, they heard something.
Woke up really out of me what sleep I had by this noise. First of all, it was like hail. And then it got nearer onto the roof, and it was like a lot of cats scratching, or like an aerial scratching about, you know, up there. And then I thought to myself, well, what on earth is that? I lay in bed for quite a while, and I got quite hot. I got panicky, you know. So I did venture, and I paid to bed. And I looked out of the window, and there wasn't a drop of rain. It was all dry. Everything was as dry as a bone. But after that went over, I heard a whimpering noise, and like someone going, that was the noise it was. And I thought, whatever is it? And I sat on the side of the bed, of course Jean's in with me, and she said, whatever's the matter with you? I said, do you hear that noise? She said, no, nothing, don't wake me up. She went to sleep again. So the dog downstairs, she didn't bark, but she was making that woofing noise. You know, woof like they do. And afterwards, when I turned over on my side and I got into bed, it looked as though there was a light, like the cloud going over a moon. I don't know whether anything passed over then, but there was no planes, nothing at all inside. And in Church Street, when everyone was awoken by booms, bangs and strange scratching noises, people reported an eerie quiet for a period after. And then, above the rooftops, people reported seeing lights and strange objects and craft darting across the sky.
Noise woke me.
Tell me about
the droning noise. They were like sound waves. Never heard anything like it before. Never.
Loud?
Oh, terribly loud. That's why I can't understand why my neighbours didn't hear it. Because I'm not a light sleep. I sleep soundly.
And none of your neighbours heard
No.
this?
No. Even my little boy was fast asleep. I went in to see him. I was too frightened, really, to think. I shall never forget it.
Now, this wasn't one person telling a strange story. It was a town trying to understand something together. People stepped outside their homes not because they were frightened, but because they expected to see something familiar. An aircraft, military activity, anything that would explain the sounds that they just heard. What made this different was the noise itself. It was a shared experience. People who had never spoken before discovered they heard the same thing, at the same time, from different parts of town. Bell Hill, East Street, Portway, the High Street, Church Street. Each report sounded eerily similar. A deep humming, a grinding or booming sound, sometimes lasting seconds and sometimes minutes, and then silence. Now, this place holds a very special place in my heart, because living around this area when my dad moved here, I think back in 2014, up until about 2018, there's Warminster over there. Our houses kind of overlook this general area, and this is where we had some of our own most profound experiences, and some of them entail bright orbs, things which seemingly look like they teleport across the sky. Like my profile picture, my brother and I saw two V-shaped craft, and I saw one on a separate occasion as well. And just strange triangular formations, lots of paranormal or seemingly paranormal activity. And this is practically what got me into this subject, to kind of find answers to all of the things that me and my family experienced. And it's been a never-ending cycle, I can tell you that. During this time period, local newspapers started receiving letters, phone calls and personal visits. Not wild claims, but measured descriptions by ordinary people trying to understand what they'd experienced. One journalist in particular, Arthur Shuttlewood, began collecting these accounts.
What sparked your interest in the first place?
Well, simply the fact that I'm a news reporter in this area, and of course I have to report every item of news that comes in. And this was such extraordinary news, if true, of course, and so such reputable people were coming forward, you know, such as the head postmaster of the town, a vicar, his wife, his 3 children, hospital physiotherapist, hospital matron, an army major who alleged that his car was virtually stopped dead at 40 miles an hour. These sorts of people have to be trusted, you know, for their integrity, viewed from a reporting viewpoint. So I reported the stories.
And what actually converted you into believing that these really were things from outer space?
Well, simply the only thing that can convert one into a belief into these quote objects unquote, and that's a visual experience oneself. Once one sees for oneself, that's it, and nothing will deter you from your absolute belief from then on.
How many of these things would you say that you've now seen in total?
I've seen an average personally, and I'm not boasting, I assure you, of 2 per week in the last 7.5 years, so it's getting on for about 800.
Among the many reports, there was one claim that stands out, and during the height of the Warminster events, a local man reported that he had captured footage of a flying saucer using a film camera, and according to the accounts at the time, the object appeared disc-shaped and moved silently across the sky.
I had a camera with me. I was taking it down to my sister who wanted to borrow it, and well, as I say, I just had the camera with me, and pure luck, I just undid it and took a picture.
The object was staying still all this time, was it, or was it moving?
No, it was moving.
But moving slowly?
It was moving fairly fast. I wouldn't like to say how fast, but I couldn't say how fast.
Now, some people have said that when they've tried to take a picture of one of these things, there's been some mysterious force or radiation that stopped the camera from working. Did you find this?
It didn't stop my camera from working.
Have you had people say that this picture is a fake?
Of course I have, yes. I mean...
What do you say to them when they say that?
They're entitled to their own opinion. I know it's not a fake. And it doesn't really bother me what other people think.
Now by this point, whatever had been heard in the town was no longer the focus. Up here, the concern wasn't the sound, it was the light. Cley Hill rises sharply from the surrounding landscape, higher, more isolated and more exposed than most of the ground near Warminster. From its summit, the view stretches for miles, across fields, roads and rooftops, and on clear nights, the sky feels unusually close. And it was from places like this that people began to report something different. Not noises, not vibrations, but lights that didn't behave as expected. They were often described as star-like, steady, white or orange in colour, and at first glance they could be mistaken for aircraft and distant stars.
Looking back, I remember seeing shimmering orbs of light in the sky, silver discoids, things called amber gamblers, things, orange lights that suddenly would appear in the sky and sort of gamble along before suddenly turning off at right angles and disappearing into thin air.
You were
amazing. I was actually convinced that, and probably still am convinced, that Warminster in the 60s was invaded by either extraterrestrials or visitors from interdimensions. And the evidence alone shows that something strange was happening.
Now I'm on top of the ancient Battlesbury hill fort near the camp as well, and this is another prominent marker where people have reported strange orb lights, weird shaped craft, things darting off in different directions instantaneously, and strange noises, much like what was reported towards Bell Hill and Cley Hill. The same eerie sounds were coming from this general direction too. Now off in the distance you can see Cley Hill, and that's where I was there in the morning, and just below that is the Battlesbury military camp, and there's quite a few military camps around the area, and some off in the distance over there as well. They're dotted around. Now in this specific place there's also, again, strange reports of lights and craft, and then also from unnamed military personnel and guards on the gate report dark shadowy figures with no facial features or any uniform or any insignias to kind of show as to who they are. And they kind of move and whisper around and disappear and appear in random places, and even reports coming from inside the blocks themselves of people being visited in a very strange manner. So again, there's a lot of strange lore around here, and this isn't just unique to this specific area, it's reported all around here. Now there was also someone that commented in one of my videos saying that their ex had to move away from their house because
they were experiencing haunting-like behaviour. They thought the house was very haunted. And multiple times they woke up with the windows open, doors open and things of that nature. And that's exactly what me and my family experienced when living in Warminster as well. There was like 3 separate occasions waking up in the morning. We had 2 dogs at the time and they didn't wake up. And every single window, every single door, every single drawer, anything that had a hinge that could open was completely open. The front door, back door. And every time the dogs were asleep near the back door and no one woke up and the dogs didn't wake up or react. So very strange, and it's quite amazing to see someone else have that same exact experience. It just gives me chills, man.
By the late 1960s, the most intense period of activity had passed. The crowds on the hills thinned, the newspapers moved on, life in Warminster returned, outwardly, to normal. But the story didn't end, it shifted. And some of the strangest reports didn't come from the town at all. They came from the edges, from the margins of Salisbury Plain, from roads, tracks and boundary zones close to military land. And unlike their earlier accounts, these reports weren't about lights in the sky, they're about figures on the ground. Witnesses, often unnamed, describe seeing dark, human-shaped silhouettes at night, standing near fences, near tracks, near temporary camps or training areas. These figures were usually seen briefly, sometimes motionless, sometimes moving for a moment and then disappearing. There were no facial features, no obvious uniforms, no sound, just a shape. Now these don't appear in early newspaper coverage, they don't form part of the original wave of sound and light reports. Most surfaced later in recollections, interviews and secondary UFO literature, and that matters, because it means they sit in a grey area between experience and interpretation. And out in the fields and the surrounding area, in patterns that arrive quickly, overnight, and leave just as silently. Wiltshire has long been associated with crop circles, complex formations appearing in farmland, often without witnesses, often without explanation. Some dismissed as hoaxes, some clearly man-made, others less easily explained. Perfect geometry, flattened crops without breakage, patterns that seem to arrive all at once. And what's important here isn't belief, it's proximity, and many of these formations appear near ancient sites, near military land, near places already associated with strange aerial sightings, including areas not far from Warminster, the same landscape, the same sky. I didn't approach these sites looking for answers, I approached them to observe, to measure, to document what was actually there. And at several crop circle locations I carried out readings, not experiments designed to prove anything, but attempts to understand whether these places felt different, and in some cases they did. Instruments behaving erratically, measurements fluctuated unexpectedly, readings differed sharply between the centre of formations and the surrounding field. Perfectly woven patterns, no breakages and elongated nodes. And this was all enough to raise some serious questions. With animals reacting strangely in the vicinity, and people seeing stuff the night before some of these patterns arrive. Are these things connected? That's the wrong question. A better one might be, why do these phenomena, lights, patterns and anomalies seem to return to the same landscapes, the same kind of places, over and over again? And I interviewed the landowner at the Sutton Veney site, and he reports strange animal behaviours, lights and weird stuff happening in the vicinity the day before.
So I'm a farmer that farms here, and we farm on the edge of Somerset and around here, which we've been farming for about 350 years. And before that we farmed in Dorset. So we've always been farmers. And yeah, it's a beautiful part of the world. We're very lucky on a nice day.
Gorgeous crop as well, look at that.
Yeah, unfortunately it's one of our better crops.
Yeah.
It's been a very difficult growing season this year with the wet winter and the very dry spring. And we were quite upset when we came out here to see the crop had been flattened, however it had happened. What a phenomenon, really.
Yeah, yeah. When did you first notice this crop circle?
We got a racing yard at the bottom here.
Yeah.
And the horses were coming up the gallops, which were just right by.
Yeah.
You'd be able to see. And that was about 6 o'clock in the morning. They informed us that a crop circle had appeared overnight. We had people up in the woods watering trees that we planted. They finished about 9:30, 10:15. Gamekeeper was walking his dogs at 10:30. So it was between the hours of 10:30 and 6 o'clock.
It's quite significant. Have you seen anything unusual in the area? Lights, military craft, objects, anything of that nature?
I've seen a lot of. I've seen lights. Seen some bright lights.
Is that recently?
Yeah. But we also have the Salisbury Plains about 3 miles that way.
Yeah.
So there's always a bit of activity over there. But we thought it was to do with that, but it could have been. It was quite close, and it might have been something else.
Yeah, 100%.
And as my house is out of sight, I can't say for sure what it was.
Yeah, and the historical significance of this place, we talked very briefly about your Bronze Age settlements in line with the churches over to the left side over there. Would you like to go into that just briefly?
So we have a Bronze Age settlement, a field up on top, a field over. Then there's a burial stone, and then we have, in a parallel line, we have the crop circle, and then all in line with the church, as you can see.
In the different distance, yeah.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Have you noticed any unusual behaviour with any sort of birds, your animals at all, livestock,
I've
pets?
noticed my cows have been staring a lot this way up on the hill there. I noticed that yesterday. Today they seem a bit more settled. Now, I don't know why that is. They're used to people, so it won't be people. I don't really know what that is or what it was.
Have you experienced anything like this ever before? Or is this your first time having something so close to home?
I've never experienced anything like this before.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have no crop circles here. As a matter of fact, I haven't seen crop circles in Wiltshire for a year or two. They used to be quite often every summer, but we hadn't seen them.
Wow. Long before the first reports of strange sounds and unexplained lights, the landscape was already being studied, not by scientists, but by people who believed the land itself held patterns, and they called them Leylines. And Leylines are said to be straight alignments connecting ancient sites, hill forts, standing stones, churches and burial mounds. And in Wiltshire, these alignments become unusually dense. Ancient sites cluster together, lines overlap, and the centre of several proposed alignments is Warminster. And some researchers point to a triangle. Not a perfect geometric shape, not something marked on the ground, but a repeated pattern formed by key locations across the landscape. Ancient hills, ritual sites, places associated with sightings, sound, and later, crop circles. And when lines are drawn between them, Warminster sits very close to the centre. And they didn't seem to build here by accident. Hill forts like Battlesbury and Scratchbury, prominent hills like Cley Hill, ancient paths, churches and markers, they weren't placed randomly. They followed the land and perhaps something in it. If these alignments mean nothing, then they mean nothing. But if they mean something, then Warminster may not be a random hotspot at all. It may simply sit where different elements of the landscapes intersect. Sky, earth and human attention. Because that idea alone changes the story, because it suggests the phenomena didn't arrive here, they were drawn here, not by intention, not by design, but by geography. And it's a reminder that some places collect stories, that some landscapes seem to attract experience, and that human beings, ancient or modern, have always noticed when something about a place feels different. And Warminster may sit at the centre of nothing more than a coincidence, or it may sit at the intersection of forces we don't yet fully understand. Either way, the pattern exists, on maps, in reports, in memory, and patterns, once noticed, are hard to unsee. Thank you so much for watching. I just hope you guys enjoyed this little documentary. It's the first real serious one I've made, but there's going to be many more on the horizon. So let me know if you enjoyed, and if you did, please like, share, subscribe, do all that good stuff. You know, help a brother out. You know, it's been a pleasure to make this video, and it was a little bit personal for me to kind of go back to old stomping grounds, to some really specific areas where me and my family had some crazy profound experiences, and the whole journey around there. And we did a sky watch in the evening with my brother, but unfortunately we only lasted about 3 hours until we got almost frozen to death. All right, so yeah, if you guys enjoyed it and you're feeling generous as well, you can always buy me a coffee in the description below that goes towards fuel, venturing to these sites, and towards kit as well, so I would be very appreciative. But yeah, thank you guys so much again, big love, see you in the next one.